Hale and Hardy, Personality and Health. On a frigid February morning, while awaiting my annual checkup in my doctor's office, I observed a rather unsettling scene. A man, ruddy-cheeked, blue-eyed, with a receding hairline and appearing to be in his mid-30s, was engrossed in what I presumed was a crossword puzzle. However, he seemed increasingly agitated. Abruptly, he exclaimed, "Oh my God, I'm going to die." My initial, albeit fleeting, thought was that he had chosen an opportune location for such a realization. Suppressing that impulse, my next thought, which I indulged, was to glance at his magazine for an explanation. It turned out to be a popular magazine featuring a health questionnaire that I instantly recognized. What had he read, and was his concern justified? If you can refrain from shouting, you can try the questionnaire he was taking. Here it is. Indicate any of the following 43 life events that have occurred in your life within the last 12 months. Life event changes and health. It's important to relax, as the widely used Holmes-Rahe scale you may have just taken has limitations that will be discussed shortly. The reason to address this is due to an experience with a fellow patient named Chad in a doctor's office. After completing the scale, Chad exclaimed at his score of 423. He had read that scores over 300 indicated a high or very high risk of becoming ill in the near future, and was understandably worried. After a brief conversation, Chad was advised to interpret his score cautiously, a discussion we'll revisit soon. First, let's consider the scale's limitations. In the mid-1960s, psychiatrists Thomas H. Holmes and Richard H. Rahe developed the scale as a simple tool for epidemiological studies on stress and health problems. The scale's foundation was the idea that disruptions to daily routines lead to stress, with some life events having a major impact. Stress, in turn, was believed to compromise health and cause various medical issues. Initial research showed a small, but significant, correlation between life event stress and health problems. It's worth noting that the scale assumed even positive events, like marriage or a new job, could contribute to stress due to the disruption they cause. Similar to the Myers-Briggs type indicator, the Holmes-Rahe scale became popular and people like Chad were intrigued, or sometimes alarmed, by their results. Despite some strengths, the scale had several problems, which is why caution was advised against drawing conclusions about one's health based solely on it. Firstly, the weights assigned to each event were based on researchers' estimates of disruption, with the death of a spouse as a standard of 100 points. These standardized weights could obscure the individual weights people might assign to these events. For example, a woman who has watched her husband suffer for years might find his death a respite from his pain. Despite her grief, her stress level might be lower than someone left utterly inconsolable by a loved one's death. Allowing individuals to provide their own weights for life events would make more sense. Secondly, the weights are simply added up, ignoring that some events, like moving cities after a spouse's death, might reduce overall stress. Life events form systems, and the relationships between them need to be considered. Thirdly, while including positive events is theoretically interesting, research suggests that only negative events, not positive ones, predict subsequent health decline. Fourthly, some events, like difficulties with sex, eating, or sleeping, may actually be health issues themselves. Predicting health problems from prior health problems is unsurprising, like predicting a tadpole has a high risk of becoming a frog, rendering such items uninformative. What about Chad? During their conversation, he shared his answers with me. They chuckled at the fact that checking off Christmas added 12 points to his stress score. He had recently married and moved back to his hometown after completing a graduate degree. His father had passed away 6 months prior from a neurodegenerative disease, and Chad was glad to be closer to his mother. He was also there for his annual health checkup. Each of the scale's shortcomings is evident in interpreting Chad's health status. If only negative events are considered, and those that lessen the impact of other negative events are discounted, and if his marriage and move, both described as wonderful, are ignored, and his broken elbow is discounted, Chad's stress level and health risks seemed minimal. While not discussed in great detail then, he was cautioned against inferring health decline from such tests, with the simpler advice to really don't sweat it. In retrospect, more details could have been offered. So to Chad, if he happens to read this, this will provide more on personality and health than was conveyed that morning. And to anyone else who has had an eventful year, hold back the scream and read on. Personality, stress, and health, hardiness and resilience. Among the many people who took the Holmes-Rohe scale were employees at the Illinois Bell Telephone Company, IBT, in Chicago in the mid-1970s. Salvatore Maddi, a personality psychologist at the University of Chicago, and Carl Horn, an IBT executive vice president, began a study of personality, stress, coping, and health with many IBT employees. Maddi and Horn anticipated major disruptive changes at the facility due to divestiture and deregulation in the telecommunications industry. In 1981, IBT experienced a massive staff reduction, from 26,000 to about 14,000, increasing daily stresses. The employees continued to be studied throughout this period, providing an opportunity to examine the impact of major life event changes on emotional and physical health. The study's results were interesting. About 2/3 of the employees showed symptoms of health decline and lowered performance, but a third seemed to deal effectively with these changes and remained resilient. The two groups didn't differ in their Holmes-Rohe scale scores, meaning those who survived the stresses of downsizing reported the same level of life event changes as those who did not. The distinguishing factor was a set of personality characteristics that Maddi and colleagues called hardiness, comprising 3 key components: commitment, control, and challenge. Commitment was exemplified by being fully engaged in everyday events, not feeling isolated. Control was demonstrated by employees who tried to influence life events rather than being passive and feeling powerless. Challenge was an attitude toward change that viewed both positive and negative changes as opportunities for growth and learning. In short, research suggests health is enhanced when control, commitment, and challenge are core aspects of an individual's personality. This is what should have been conveyed to Chad, that even with a high score on the Holmes-Rohe scale, which the author has doubts about, stress is ubiquitous, and the only healthy response isn't to avoid engaging with life. Instead, one's orientation toward change and coping mechanisms can mitigate potential health hazards. Type A personalities. Let's now turn our attention to a contrasting personality type that also carries health implications: the Type A, or coronary risk, personality. This concept is a cornerstone of research in behavioral medicine and health psychology. Widely recognized, it has woven itself into everyday discussions about lifestyles. When discussing Type A behavior with groups, there's a striking agreement on its defining features. Time urgency, assertiveness, and competitiveness are the most frequently cited traits, and these indeed reflect the outward characteristics of the Type A personality. The following calendar page vividly illustrates key aspects of Type A behavior. Observe the prominent sense of time urgency. Tasks must be completed early, in a rush, and pronto, all emphasized. The competitiveness is evident in the self-directed encouragement to be resolute and achieve the sales goal, no matter what. The final entry shows the writer's determination to catch the 5:43 train that evening for a PTA meeting, tragically, his last. Shortly after recording this entry, he succumbed to a heart attack. The health risks associated with Type A personalities are well known, but the potential benefits to achievement and career success are less obvious. Job advertisements often seek candidates who are hardworking, ambitious, committed, and eager to take on challenges, characteristics often associated with Type A individuals. While a laid-back attitude might not be favored in job applications, evidence suggests that Type A personalities excel in productivity and thrive in competitive settings. For instance, in academia, Type A researchers tend to have higher citation counts. However, Type A individuals can also present challenges for those around them due to their interaction style. They often speak louder, are more expressive, interrupt others, and exhibit impatience and bluntness. While these traits might help them achieve their goals, they can also lead to others avoiding them due to the stress of interacting with them. Interestingly, Type A individuals are often unaware of their own stress signals, focusing intensely on the task at hand. An anecdote illustrates this point. A Type A committee chairman, intensely focused on a budget issue, displayed clear signs of stress that were unnoticed by him and his colleagues, leading to a prolonged and uncomfortable meeting. In essence, Type A personalities are characterized by a need for control, a high level of commitment, and the perception of challenges in everyday pursuits. These characteristics, while potentially driving success, are also linked to an increased risk of cardiac problems. This presents a paradox, as control, commitment, and challenge are also considered core aspects of hardiness, which is believed to promote health. How can these same traits both enhance and endanger well-being? To resolve this, it's important to consider the surface versus deeper characteristics of Type A personality. While surface traits like time urgency and workaholism are commonly associated with Type A behavior, hostility is increasingly recognized as the core pathological element linked to cardiac risk. Hostile reactions to everyday frustrations, such as traffic delays or slow elevators, can be detrimental to health. Recognizing hostility as the underlying issue has practical implications. Imagine a Type A husband on vacation, seemingly relaxed but secretly working. A confrontational approach, urging him to relax, might backfire by triggering hostile feelings, especially if he isn't inherently hostile. Therefore, understanding the underlying motivations and addressing potential hostility is crucial. But first, how can we resolve the paradox about the seemingly contradictory effects of the characteristics of hardiness and Type A personalities? A shift in perspective, resolving the hardiness paradox. The seemingly contradictory effects of control, commitment, and challenge on health, as seen in hardiness and Type A personalities, can be understood by examining these qualities more closely. Control. While hardiness involves asserting influence over personally important events, Type A control often manifests as manipulative behavior driven by underlying insecurity. Individuals with Type A personalities may seek constant validation to compensate for low self-esteem, leading to indiscriminate attempts to control situations. In contrast, hardy individuals exercise control strategically, recognizing when to assert themselves and when to adapt. Commitment. Type A individuals may exhibit hypercommitment, investing heavily in every task without prioritizing their value, leading to project overload. Alternatively, they may display myopic commitment, fixating on a single goal to the exclusion of all else. Hardy individuals, on the other hand, demonstrate a more discerning sense of commitment, focusing their energy appropriately based on the situation. Challenge. Type A personalities tend to perceive a wide range of events as competitive challenges, often reacting with hostility, which negatively impacts their health. Hardy individuals approach challenges with enthusiasm and a sense of playfulness, viewing them as engaging games rather than threats. The difference between Type A and hardy individuals lies in their perspective. Hostility, a core component of Type A behavior, can amplify these tendencies to unhealthy extremes, overstimulating the nervous system and increasing the risk of stress-related health problems. These differences in perspective may be linked to personality traits, such as agreeableness, with lower scores correlating to a higher risk of coronary disease. While not a self-help guide, adopting strategies to avoid triggers of Type A behavior can be beneficial. So, what practical strategies can we employ to manage hostility? I was researching personality and health when I had the chance to observe grand rounds at a psychiatric hospital. The demonstration focused on thought stopping as a method for reducing hostile behavior. Our group of 15 individuals, with diverse backgrounds and varying levels of hostility, were instructed to close our eyes and visualize a frustrating, hostility-inducing scenario for 3 minutes. I pictured the same oblivious drivers my friend had noticed, the ones who seemed to appear on my commute. I was deeply engrossed, building up a substantial amount of anger, when the demonstrator shouted, "Stop!" through the microphone. We all reacted instantly. The instructor then asked if anyone was still thinking about the hostile event. None of us were. The abrupt "stop" had completely diverted my thoughts of road rage. The next part of the demonstration showed us how to use this cue word, "stop," to interrupt thought patterns that were creating hostility, anxiety, or other unwanted emotions. Ideally, we'd have the demonstrator yelling at us whenever we experience these unpleasant emotions, a sort of global psychiatric screamer, GPS, but that wasn't feasible. So, we learned to interrupt ourselves with "stop" in situations where hostility or anxiety was about to escalate. We started doing it aloud, but quickly learned to internalize the stop, so only we were aware of it. Over the next few weeks, I found several occasions where I could interrupt an unwanted mental state by silently and sharply intoning "stop," often blinking my eyes once for added effect. A week after the demonstration, I had the chance to use the technique. The dean asked me to address accountability in evaluating the university's courses, arguing that developing our own standards would preempt government intervention. This required me to brief each department on our self-accountability system. Knowing universities resist change and that altering academic fundamentals was like moving a cemetery, I jokingly told the dean I'd rather have open rectal surgery without anesthesia. He replied, "That can also be arranged, Professor Little." The night before my first briefing, I received an email confirming my concerns. A senior economics professor responded to my report outlining accountability procedures with, "I am appalled by your report. I will see you at the meeting tomorrow. Be prepared to fight." This unexpected and unfriendly email stressed me out. My wife noticed my tension and suggested I practice thought stopping. We agreed I needed a keyword to ward off stress from a hostile macroeconomist. She suggested a subvocal quacking sound to evoke the image of water rolling off a duck's back. I thought it was brilliant and drove to the university with a new honking addition to my behavioral toolkit. At the meeting, as I began to defend my position, my opponent rose. We stared at each other. I silently quacked, anxiety dissipated, and I calmly stated that Professor X had something important to say. The economist, surprised, quietly made his point and sat down. Throughout the rest of the meeting, I defended a controversial policy with aplomb, thanks to my subvocal quacking. However, toward the end, a psychologist and a political scientist were debating, and I intervened to clarify the political scientist's remarks. He turned, glared at me, and shouted, "Professor Little, when I want my position clarified, I'll ask to have it clarified." Taken aback, my thought-stopping skill kicked in. To my embarrassment, my subvocal quack became quite audible. I let out a loud quack. The political scientist, puzzled, asked, "Brian, did you just quack?" My attempt to cover it up was pathetic. I pretended to cough, repeating it 4 times with a quacking sound. It wasn't my finest moment. The lesson is that we can manage hostility, anxiety, and stress in the short term using techniques like thought stopping or strategic relaxation from cognitive behavior therapy. But sometimes suppressing a response backfires. Remember Dan Wegner's work on ironic processes and trying not to think about a white bear or green cat? The suppressed thought becomes more likely to surface. Try it yourself. Take 3 minutes and try not to think of a duck. Seriously. A sense of coherence, personality, health, and context. The previous chapters explored the connection between a sense of control or agency and well-being, encompassing academic and professional success as well as physical health. While a sense of control offers notable advantages, it must be grounded in a realistic assessment of actual control. Similarly, hardiness benefits individuals facing stress, but its extreme expression, as seen in Type A personalities, can increase health risks. This chapter introduces a crucial perspective on how personal dispositions and the environment interact to shape life and well-being. Aaron Antonovsky, a medical sociologist, proposed this integrative theory, distinguishing between the pathogenic view, which focuses on the origins of disease, and the salutogenic process, which examines the source and development of health. Central to salutogenesis is a person's sense of coherence, SOC, defined as a pervasive, enduring, yet dynamic feeling of confidence that one's environment is predictable and that things will work out as well as can reasonably be expected. SOC comprises 3 elements: comprehensibility, the extent to which daily life is perceived as logical, ordered, and predictable; manageability, the degree to which one feels capable of coping with environmental demands; and meaningfulness, the extent to which one invests in daily projects and pursuits as worthy endeavors. Individuals with a high SOC possess generalized resistant resources, enabling them to maintain mental and physical health when facing challenges. The phrase "as well as can reasonably be expected" is particularly insightful, echoing the importance of realistic assessments of control and the approach of hardy individuals to challenges. Furthermore, the concept of SOC emphasizes the crucial role of our environments and communities in fostering coherence. A study comparing 3 Israeli communities, a traditional agrarian community, a modern city, and a transitional community demonstrated this. The study predicted that SOC and health status would vary across the communities. For instance, in agrarian villages, the predictability of daily life is reinforced through traditional practices, fostering a sense of coherence through the feeling that things are under control. In contrast, in cities, SOC is more likely to arise from personal control over daily activities. Residents of transitional settings, lacking both traditional stability and modern agency, were expected to exhibit lower SOC. The study confirmed this prediction, with individuals in traditional and urban settings scoring similarly high on SOC, while those in the transitional setting scored significantly lower. Correspondingly, the transitional setting exhibited a higher prevalence of health problems. It is plausible that temporary declines in SOC and subsequent health deterioration can occur during other transitional periods in life, such as leaving home, changing jobs, experiencing relationship changes, having children, or retiring. These events, common in many lives, can disrupt one's sense of coherence. Personality differences also tend to be more pronounced during these transitional periods. Extroverts may become more extrovert, conscientious individuals more orderly, and disagreeable people more unpleasant. Research on SOC raises intriguing questions about designing environments and communities that are comprehensible, manageable, and meaningful. Understanding the interplay between personalities and places can enhance lives, perhaps even exceeding reasonable expectations. End of Chapter 6.